All right, welcome everyone to another GoDaddy Pro presented webinar. Today we have Nicki Ong with us, who is the founder of Simple Sprite Studio. How you doing today, Nicki?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. So I'm excited to hear you chat today. Today you're going to talk to us about growing your business with SEO services by offering search engine optimization to help your clients. So I'm just gonna go ahead and let you do your thing and step out of the way here, and then I'll pop back in at the end. So
Awesome.
without further ado, I'll let you take it away.
All right, perfect. And I am going to share my screen here. Make sure we're good to go. All right, that looks like it's up and running. All right, so hopefully you guys can all see my screen. Just let me know, Marcus, if it's having an issue for whatever reason now. And like Marcus said, so today we're going to be talking about how to grow your business with SEO services. So I'm going to talk about 3 success strategies for offering search engine optimization services to help your clients. So just to make sure that you're in the right place, because I always like to start off presentations this way, my guess is you're one of these 3 people. You're either a web designer or developer, so you're more of a creative or a technical person, and maybe you have your own company or maybe you freelance, but you're not doing anything with SEO right now. And maybe you know a little bit about it, maybe you know a little bit enough to be dangerous with it, and you're just curious about how you could grow your business with it. Secondly, you might be a digital marketer. So maybe you know a little bit more about SEO, but maybe you specialize in copywriting or social media or paid search or even video marketing. And you know a little bit more about SEO, like I said, enough to be dangerous, but you want to know more. Or you might be an agency owner. So maybe you own the web development or design company or marketing company, and you don't have an in house specialist right now, but you want to be offering your clients more. I'm just doing another double check to make sure we're all literally on the same page here, and it looks like we're good. And so what you're going to learn today are 3 success tips, like I said. So first, we're going to talk about how to implement technical SEO. So I want to teach you a few things that you can use in your web development or design business that you can implement with each and every launch of websites so that you can start telling clients that they are search engine optimized or they're at least search engine friendly. Because I really think in this day and age, having that little tag on there to say, I'm not an SEO expert, but I can guarantee you that each and every site that we put out into the world is SEO friendly, will certainly help you sell websites or your digital marketing products. Second, we're going to talk about some on-page SEO tactics that you can implement, whether you're a copywriter or you're a digital marketer. There are certain things that you can start implementing today, as well as with technical SEO. You can start doing these things today to start helping your clients even more so that they'll grow and you'll grow in turn. And then thirdly, we're going to talk about hiring SEO subcontractors and what that looks like, what you need to know, what you should be looking for. Basically, this is going to be for people who don't want to touch SEO, but they do know the value of having those SEO services in their arsenal. And then you can start growing your business by having a contractor or a freelancer on board with you. So we're going to talk about how to do that. So just so that we're all on the same page as far as why we're doing this, if it's not clear already, my true belief is that by offering your clients SEO services, you're going to be able to add even more value to what you're already doing. And in turn, help those clients. More happy clients means even more happy clients, right? And so if that's not convincing enough, here are a couple of stats for you. So 53% in general of all web traffic is coming from organic search. And I will tell you right now that 53% is on the low end of what I see mostly with clients, even before I do any work with them SEO wise. I typically see within the 60 to 70% range most of the time. And then 68% of online experiences start with a search engine. So whether you need to know that or your clients need to know that, it's really good to understand that most of our online experiences these days don't start on the social media channel. They're not even starting on YouTube necessarily. They're starting on Google and the other search engines. So basically, if your customers aren't showing up on Google, if your clients don't have their website showing up on Google, they're missing a giant opportunity, right? So, hello. I haven't introduced myself yet. Marcus did earlier, but my name is Nicki Ong, and I like to call myself a marketing therapist because a lot of my job entails holding the hands of my clients a little bit just to tell them they're doing everything right in their business. And I really enjoy that part of it. I've got 13 years of SEO, copywriting, and blogging experience, and I've spent the past 10 of those years doing a lot of subcontracting work for other agencies, which I really, really enjoy. So basically, I spend a lot of time taking off my Simple Sprout hat and putting on the hats of other businesses and helping their clients. A couple fun facts about me, just so we can spend a little time getting to know each other here. I am a mompreneur. I stay at home and run my business from home with my 2-year-old and a wife to my amazing husband. I'm an East Coast gal. I've spent equal times now in Maryland, Maine, and now Florida. I'm in St. Augustine, Florida. So I never know where to say I'm from. I just say I'm from the East Coast because I've spent equal times in all places. I'm a fitness and nutrition enthusiast. If I were to do anything else, it would probably be like a health coach or I spent many years as a college cheerleading coach. Maybe I'd get back into that. I'm currently writing my first book, which is really exciting. I'm hoping to finish that by the end of the year. I'm a red wine lover, and I like to coin myself an eternal optimist. So that's a little bit about me. I hope to learn more about you guys, whether today or in the future. And I would be remiss if I didn't also introduce my business. So, as Marcus mentioned, I am the founder of Simple Sprout Studio. And the premise, as you can imagine, at Simple Sprout is I believe that digital marketing does not have to be hard. I'm all about keeping it simple and making it attainable for both entrepreneurs and the subcontractors that I work with. So I'm all about simple, proven, and actionable marketing tactics. So for white labeling clients, I focus on search engine optimization, SEO copywriting, and copy editing, as well as ongoing blogging, and also some ongoing SEO reporting that I do for clients. So that is a little bit about me. And I also want to mention, before we really get into things today, that make sure you stick around because at the end of today's presentation, I've got something super fun for you. So you're not going to want to miss it. All right. So all that being said, we're going to dive right in here. I don't know any of you, and I don't know your experience with SEO. So I like to start every SEO presentation off with what is SEO, because I want to make sure we all have the same understanding of it before we start talking about it and how to do it. So search engine optimization is everything that we can do on a website and off it to help your rankings on Google and the other search engines. So basically, our focus is to help our clients rank #1 on Google for their main search terms that their clients are searching for. Cool? All right, it's pretty simple. But the way to do it is a little more complex. So we're going to talk about that. So first, we're going to talk about implementing technical SEO. So this is my first strategy for you. In my mind, this is again more for web designers, developers, maybe project managers, anybody that feels more comfortable with the technical aspects of a website. So I'm talking about dealing with code and dealing with the finer tunings of the website. And my belief truly is that, especially for designers and developers, if you can start implementing some of these SEO tactics in your business, you're not only going to be able to help those clients, but you're going to help them succeed by converting more customers for them just because you've done a couple of simple SEO tactics. All right. So I'm going to start this page by saying I am not a web developer. I know enough to be dangerous when it comes to coding and all things HTML. So if you're a web developer, you know more about this than I do, but I do know enough about this to say that implementing all of these tactics will immediately help your customers do better on the search engines. So make sure, if you do nothing else today and you're a web developer, put these tactics in place. And I would just take a quick screenshot of this and use it as your checklist and just go through each website that you launch and make sure that all of these things are in place. So first things first, use clean code. I want you to make sure that if nothing else, your code is clean on your site. And you know what this means, right? We want to make sure that there's not a bunch of junk in there, things that are bogging down the site, taking up space. In general, I will say that we build all of our websites at Simple Sprout on WordPress, and we love it because it's can be a very clean slate, and I'm sure many of you love WordPress as well. Second thing, you want to make sure it's responsive. The nice part about SEO is that for the most part, balancing user friendliness and doing well in the search engines go hand in hand. So basically, if you're making your website user friendly, you're going to do well on SEO, which is really nice because we want to make sure that the website is user friendly, right? So make sure that your site is not only mobile friendly, of course, but make sure it's responsive. Similarly, you want to make sure that your site's accessible. So we know that from a website standpoint and a usability standpoint, that it's really important that every single visitor that comes to the website can use it and use it well. Google and the other search engines are also taking this into high consideration, much more than they ever have in the past, by basically saying if your site is not accessible, you're not going to do well here. So by doing things like implementing alt tags or again, just making sure the code is clean, by having clickable phone numbers that actually call or addresses that take you to Google Maps, things like that that make it accessible are only going to help you in the search engines. Um, Next, we want to make sure that there's semantic markup, which of course means that there's a clear language that search engines and browsers can understand. Similarly, you want to make sure there's always attributes for those tags. So they're describing the characteristics and elements in each of your tags. And my son came to say hello. It's very interesting on my ring, like, hi, honey. Next, you want to make sure that you're using those ARIA labels. So any sort of strings of code, you're using those ARIA labels to make sure that search engines understand what that code is actually about. Basically, for those three things, 4, 5, and 6 in the middle of this page, basically the more descriptive we can be for search engines to help them understand what's in the code and make it crystal clear, the better they can serve up results for searchers. Next is schema markup. So I don't know how many of you are doing this right now, but schema is becoming more and more important when it comes to the search engines. So basically, this language is enabling Google to use rich snippets in search a little bit more. So I'm going to pause and explain that if you're not familiar. You will be as I explain this. So rich snippets in the search engines are basically any sort of call out for a search. So it may be what is semantic markup, and it will call out a specific website by saying semantic markup is da 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 da. That's an example of a rich snippet. Another example would be you're looking up a recipe and you're looking up homemade pizza recipe. Uh, Usually the first result will pop up and it will literally have that recipe. Essentially, a rich snippet is any time that you don't need to leave Google to go to a website. The ability to show up there is by using schema markup. So there's a ton of different ways to use schema, and I'll let you Google because I don't want to get too in the trenches with some of these things today. But there's a ton of different ways to use it, like recipes, like local search. So if you have a local client, applying schema to like their contact page is really, really valuable so that they can show up um, for Google Maps and for rich snippets as well. So you want to make sure that you're using schema anytime you can. And I will say, as just a side note, Squarespace and WordPress, which are the two content management systems that we use the most, do have a really easy way to apply schema if you're not super HTML efficient. So just keep that in mind as well. You can Google that too. And then last but not least, you want to make sure you're using HTTPS, the secure version versus HTTP. Again, if you're a developer, you already know this. This is kind of old school as far as, yeah, of course, Nikki, we do that anyway. But it's important to note that search engines are now taking that into account. So if you've got any old websites that you've launched years and years ago, I would revisit that and make sure they have that secure SSL certificate, because search engines use that as a factor when they're ranking websites. So you want to make sure each website that you launch has that HTTPS address. All right. Just checking and making sure we're good technically. I don't want to lose you guys. So next, what I want you to keep in mind from a technical SEO standpoint is a clean structure. Again, this is pretty typical as far as usability 101 rules, or maybe 201 in this case, but we want to make sure that the structure of the website is clean. So always make sure that you have a user-friendly navigation. I think that in general, web design shops don't always take the time necessary at the get-go to really define what the structure or the navigation is going to be of the website, because there's a lot of focus on design and what pages are we going to have, but not necessarily the structure of those. So really take the time to identify what is the best structure, what makes the most sense for the client's customers at the end of the day, because the more user friendly it is, the better they're going to do on search. Second, make sure that you have clean and keyword rich URLs. Now, if you're using something like WordPress or Squarespace, you already know that those URLs are going to be auto-generated and typically be relatively keyword rich, depending on what the name of the page is. But if you're using a different system, or you decide to change the URLs for whatever reason of your pages, try to infuse keywords, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. Infuse those keywords wherever you can and make sure that the URLs are clean. And of course, by that, I mean there's not a lot of weird characters, certainly, or unnecessary words like the, it's, things like that. Next, this is something I often see web developers forgetting, unfortunately. If you're working from relaunching an old site to a new site, please take the time to set up 301 redirects. And this is why. Your client's old site built up a certain amount of trust on the search engines. Whether they were there a year or 10 years, those URLs have a certain amount of trust built up. If you don't pass along that trust to the new site for whatever reason, they're missing out on everything that they've built. So take the time, build those 301 redirects, and ideally you're going to build one individually for each page. I know it's a little tedious sometimes, but it is well worth it, and they'll be better off in the long run. And then last but not least, use canonicalization best practices. So basically this means any sort of duplicate content issues where you're talking especially around whether it's HTTPS website.com versus HTTP website.com, HTTPS www.website.com. That's 3 different versions right there. And then you've got all the versions of a blog, for instance, always has these issues where there's the blog post itself, there's the copy that is in the archives, there's a copy for any sort of tags, there's a copy for the author. So basically, canonicalization allows you to ensure that only one version and the best version shows up on the search engines, and you're not competing with yourself. Next, we want to ensure indexing. So again, just so everybody's on the same page here as far as what indexing is. Indexing is basically that the search engines know about you. So I want you to think of it this way. When you do a Google search and 10 results pop up, those results are actually a copy of the internet. They're not the live internet, because of course it would take a ton of time for the bots to go out, get fresh content and bring it back. So basically indexing is the copy of the website that Google has. So you can imagine that it's really, really important, because if your client's site is not indexed, they're not going to show up. Big problem, right? So first things first, you want to make sure that the website is visible to visitors and to search engines. Now, it's sort of a silly problem, but I see it all the time, unfortunately. When a new website gets launched, typically if you're using something like WordPress or Squarespace or another content management system, it may or may not be on a staging site, but once it gets moved over, there is usually a robots.txt file that's blocking the site from the search engines, right? In WordPress and Squarespace, it's a little tiny box that basically says don't allow search engines to search the site or to crawl the site. I have seen so many times, unfortunately, web developers forget to uncheck that little box, and then weeks or even months go by and the client's like, hey, I Googled myself and I'm not coming up anywhere, what's up? So make sure you uncheck that box. Make sure it's visible, basically. Next, you want to do a little bit more due diligence. So Many of these things, by the way, only take a couple of seconds, minutes, if that. So it's well worth it for your clients. I want you to make sure that you always install Google Search Console. I'm going to talk about that more in a little bit and why Search Console is so powerful. But let's leave it to say that it's really important to install Google Search Console for every site that you launch if you're not doing that already. Next, I want you to just double check that robots.txt file when the launch is complete, just to make sure that the bots, searchers can all see the site just how they should. Now, you already know that if you're using WordPress or Squarespace or some of those other content management systems, that you've already got a built-in robots.txt file that is going to block things like your login pages or any pages that don't need to be viewed. That's great. I want you to make sure, though, that the rest of the site is searchable. Next, you're going to create and submit a sitemap to Google Search Console. So again, if you're using those content management systems, many of them have built-in capability for a sitemap, or maybe you build your own. Either way is totally cool. If you do use WordPress, I do highly recommend using Yoast SEO. I love that plugin. It's great for SEO in general, and it also creates a sitemap for you. So you're going to take that sitemap link and submit it on Google Search Console. And it's very easy. On the left-hand side, you'll see a spot for sitemaps and you just add it in. It takes 2 seconds. That will ensure that Google knows about every single page on the website and can continuously crawl that sitemap to make sure that they know about every page. Next, you want to make sure that you confirm indexing after you launch your Google Search Console. I'm sorry, after launch on Google Search Console. So this is one of my favorite tricks to kind of double check indexing. So while you can check for indexing on Google Search Console, there's a whole section devoted to how many pages are indexed, and then there's an additional section that's devoted to how often the site is crawled, which can be very interesting, especially right after launch, to kind of make sure that the bots are there, they're doing their due diligence. But I always like to follow it up with this little command. So you can go to Google and don't include the quotation marks, but simply type in site : no spaces, and then website.com. You also don't need those brackets. That's just to show that that's the website. So site : the website.com. And then what that will do is show you the index of every single page on the website and how, more or less, how it's going to show up on Google. So that's super powerful. So if your client, you can use it for this too. If your client's ever saying, hey, I'm not seeing my site anywhere, what's going on? You can always send them that link. I do this all the time to say, your site is there, Google knows about it, and they're actively crawling it, and here's what it looks like to potential searchers. Now, rankings are a whole nother thing, and we'll get to that. Okay, so that was indexing. Now, I mentioned that I'm going to get into Search Console as well as analytics a little bit more. So Google Search Console and Google Analytics are my favorite tools for data analysis, collection, pretty much everything under the sun. They're free, which is awesome. And there are certainly Google products, but it gives you fantastic data and your clients fantastic data. So even if you don't ever look at it yourself because that's not what you do or you're not interested, it will give your clients great data. So it's really a value add to hand this off to them. So make sure these two things are installed. It takes all of 5 minutes. And then you'll get, for Google Search Console, you'll see organic traffic and organic rankings, huge, right? You'll get any sort of website errors, which is important for you. And I will also say that you actually will get emailed about errors the second that they happen. So an error triggers in Google Search Console, you'll immediately get an email and you'll be able to fix it. So if you have like an ongoing relationship with clients where you have maybe monthly retainer with them where you deal with any errors or any sort of updates, this is perfect because you can get proactive and ahead of the game. Next, you'll get indexing data. Like I mentioned, there's a whole section devoted to what pages are indexed as far as Google is concerned. And then last but not least is Core Web Vitals. We're going to talk about this more in just a second, but Core Web Vitals are basically how usable is the website. And you get all of that data right within Google Search Console. Now, I will say with that, I work with a lot of small business clients, and with Core Web Vitals, there has to be a certain amount of data and traffic to actually gather enough for this. So I'm going to give you another tool that works in tandem. But suffice it to say that more and more core web vitals are becoming an important Google ranking factor. And so it's really key to check these out. Next is Google Analytics. So again, make sure that's installed because not for Search Console. Search Console can go back in time actually with data potentially. Sometimes I see that it doesn't. It starts on the day of installation. But with Google Analytics, you only start collecting data the day you install it. So make sure upon launch, you always install it because if you do it a month or two or a year later, you lose out on all that data. And that's just silly as far as I'm concerned. So with analytics, if you're unfamiliar, you get general visitor data. So things like the number of visits, the time on site, bounce rate, which is the percent of people that come to one page and then leave. Um, Geographic data, where in the world are they coming from, all sorts of good stuff. You'll also see incoming traffic channels. So where are people coming from? Are they coming from the search engines? Are they coming from referral sites? So other websites linking? Are they coming from social media? Are they coming from direct traffic? So they're typing in the URL, or maybe it's paid search. Then you'll get page data. So what are the most popular pages? And also every stat under the sun based on those pages. So how many people came to the page, how much time did they spend there, what was the bounce rate, all that good stuff. And then finally, conversion data. So you also want to make sure this would be a value add, kind of an additional step. If your client has a contact form, which basically almost every website has these days, always install or create rather a thank you page so that there's some sort of conversion step after it. In other words, only people going to that page would have taken the conversion. So your thank you page can then become a goal in Google Analytics, and then you can start backtracking how people got there. This also applies for e-commerce sites, so any sort of thank you page after the sale, or it could be an email sign up. Once people sign up for the email, then they hit that conversion point. But this is really valuable data for both you potentially and your client. Okay, then we are going to talk about site speed. So this is where Core Web Vitals kind of comes back into play. You already know as a web developer or even a designer or other web professional that site speed is super important. In fact, if people have to spend more than 2 seconds on a website these days, they're out of there, right? So you want a fast website because it makes sense for users and it makes sense for the search engines too because they're using that in their algorithms. So how can you improve site speed? You probably know these things already, but a lot of this is just to remind you and just kind of be that hint, hint, nudge, nudge to make sure you're going down through this in a launch checklist or a post-launch checklist that you have. So first things first, compress your files and your code, certainly minimize what you don't need. And you can do things like tree shaking for that. And you can use smaller image files, of course, as well as embed every single video. You already know this. All videos should be on Vimeo or YouTube and you're embedding them rather than putting them directly on the website. And I will say on that note, also remind your clients of that because I'm sure you've experienced this and I know we experienced this where once you hand off the website, some things start happening as far as clients go, and they'll start putting a bunch of stuff on there that shouldn't be on there. So just remind them of some of these tactics as well. Next, you want to make sure you use technology to your advantage. So you might use a CDN, leverage browser caching, or things like pre-connect, pre-fetch, and preload. So depending on how you like to do things, you may use any number of those different options. And then finally, test the speed. I think this is where some developers may miss the mark a little bit because they assume having done everything else right, that the site is just going to inherently be fast, but it isn't always. So this is the tool that you can use instead of Google's Core Web Vitals tool that I just mentioned in Search Console. You can use their page speed insights. So you can either Google that or at the end of the talk, I've got a link for you that you can download this presentation, and this is an active link that you can go ahead and click on. All right, so my developers and designers, that was for you. So we talked about implementing technical SEO. So we chatted about building an SEO friendly site, creating that clean structure so everything makes sense for the user and the search engine, indexing and how to do that better, installing data and analytics always, and improving that site speed. So that was success tip number one. And number two, we're going to talk a little bit about implementing on-page SEO. So who's this one for? I would say mostly copywriters, copy editors, digital marketers, bloggers, anybody that's usually creating that content this is going to be a little bit better for them. But if you're a developer or project manager or even an owner, you can still implement this for your clients. So in my mind, using on-page SEO really takes all that technical work that we talked about to the next level because we're actually optimizing a little bit more for the keywords that your clients' customers are searching for online. Okay, so step one is keyword research. So if you're unfamiliar with keyword research, basically our end goal is to, as I sort of mentioned, match the keywords that your clients' customers are searching for online with the words that you're using on the website. And how do we figure that out? Keyword research. So start by brainstorming keywords, and your client can help you with this. You can jot down your own ideas, they can jot down their own ideas. They can get some ideas from family or friends, and so can you. From their customers. So they can basically say, if you were looking for us or when you were looking for us, what words would you type into Google? 9 times out of 10, they're going to know all of them. But it's that one time where somebody phrases something a little bit differently, or they're using a little bit of a unique keyword that, the lights start going off, the ideas start flowing in. And then certainly competition. And here is where I also mentioned using that cite colon command on Google that I mentioned, where you do cite colon website.com. You can use that for competition as well to start seeing what they're using, which is really valuable. And then if there's any analytics data from the previous website or existing website, certainly use that to your disposal as well. Next, I want you to use a keyword research tool. My two favorites right now are the Google Ads Keyword Planner. That's really valuable if you're doing paid search as well, of course. And I have a blog post on my blog. It's pretty recent. So if you go to simplesprout.studio and go to my blog and go back, you'll look up the Google Ads Keyword Planner. They want you to sign up for ads, I will say, but there's a little bit of a workaround, and I've got that in that post for you. And I'm also loving Uber Suggest by Neil Patel and his team. It's fantastic. So once you get on these tools, you're basically going to start inputting keywords and it will start spitting out related ideas. So I'm in St. Augustine, Florida. And so let's say want to take the family out to dinner and I'm searching for Jacksonville restaurants. If I type that into a research tool, keyword research tool, it may start coming up with places to eat Jacksonville, Florida, or things to do Jacksonville, Florida, or best restaurant Jacksonville, Florida. So you can see how it starts to give you ideas. And then around each keyword, it's going to give you the total or average search volume for it. So how many people are looking for that keyword, how much competition is around that keyword, and other data depending on the tool as far as how much it would cost to do paid advertising through Google, as well as the difficulty of it overall. Really what I'm looking for is the low-hanging fruit first and foremost. So I would be looking for high search volume for the keywords, which ones are searched upon the most, and which ones have lower competition. That's sort of the low-hanging easy fruit, right? That's what we can get to pretty easily. That doesn't mean that we should discount the low search volume, high competition, because those can be infused as well, but you want to do a good mix. In other words, you don't want to just stick with things that have low search volume and high competition. Stands to reason, right? Next, I want you to kind of keep in mind or be mindful of, or even separate the keywords that are long tail. So these are going to be longer keywords and phrases. So this may be something like how to identify long tail keywords would be a great long tail keyword. I wouldn't necessarily have a page on my website devoted to that, but it would be the perfect blog post or social media post or podcast even, excuse me. So keep those in mind as you're doing your keyword research to kind of put those aside as a special content specific idea. Next, you want to make sure you're implementing those keywords. So where do we do that? You want to do that within your title tags, meta descriptions, headers, URLs, links, content, alt tags, calls to action, all sorts of fun places, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Now, there's a lot on here, I know, so I'm going to go through one by one. So the most important place for your keywords is the title or the title tag. And I want you to think of all of these, each and every one, I'm just checking through, on a page by page basis. So basically, if someone's searching for, let's say, a cupcake shop in their local area, but not just any cupcakes. I'm looking for red velvet cupcakes. And a local cupcake shop has a page devoted just to red velvet cupcakes. As a searcher and as an SEO person, I want searchers to land on that red velvet cupcake page, not the home page and have to navigate from there. So that red velvet cupcake page has to be super optimized for red velvet cupcakes, best red velvet cupcakes, how to make red velvet cupcakes. Oh, we have a blog post for that over here. So it should be totally infused with it. So back to the title tag. The title of each page is going to show up in a couple of places. First, and most importantly, it's going to show up as the blue or purple once you click it link on Google. So you can imagine how important that is for searchers, and I'm telling you for search engines. So search engines use this as a really important factor to understand what each page is about. You want to make sure that you're front loading important keywords, because as you can see, it cuts off, and I always forget the character limit, but it's not a big deal to go over the, I think it's 65 characters, something like that. Not a big deal to go over because Google will actually pull the most important parts of the title depending on the search. So you want to make sure it's phrase-like. I always include branding usually at the end, as well as if it's a local business, I always include the location in that title. You'll also see the title at the top of the browser window if you're ever curious what it is. Next is the description, meta description, search engine description. That tag is found here in the black text right underneath the title in a Google search. So you can see how important that one is too. On the website, you're not going to see it unless you're like me and you're looking in the code, or maybe like you and looking in the code, but it is this black text here. You'll see typically those meta descriptions are going to be more sentence-like, again, pulling from the content on the page as far as what that page is about. And I do also like to end meta descriptions with a call to action. So whether it's a phone number or a simple contact us today, or it could be something like contact us right now for the next month. We're running a 10% off discount. You know, obviously worded a little bit better, but that's a good opportunity for that. Next, your URL. Again, if you're using something like auto-generated URLs, you may or may not need this. Definitely keep it simple first and foremost, but there is an opportunity to include keywords whenever necessary. So for instance, I have some courses on my website, and instead of just naming it courses, I decided to name it SEO courses to make it that much more optimized. Headers are going to be important, and that those of course show up as that bigger, bolder text, typically near the top of the page, or you're also using it throughout the page. Now, I will say, just on a more technical note, do make sure that from a development standpoint, that H1s are only used one time, H2s are used minimally, H3s are, you know, under those, and so on. As a user and also training your clients, definitely tell them to make sure that they're using them in progression throughout the page. So basically the H1s up top, then you've got your H2s and so on, and you're using them in a way that that makes sense from a design standpoint and from a usability standpoint. From a search engine standpoint, the higher, or the technically the lower the number, so like H1, H2, the lower the number, the more important the keywords within it. So just to keep that in mind as well. Then finally, of course, your content. You want to infuse all those keywords within the content and within links and any sort of calls to action. Now, a note here on the links, searchers and search engines scan pages, right? As readers, you and I both do this. We scan web pages or we scan blog posts to get content from them. If we hit a link, which obviously in many cases they're underlined or they have a different color, they stand out more, and it just says learn more or click here, I have absolutely no context for what am I going to get when I learn more or click here, right? So make sure that you or your client infuse keywords within it. You can certainly say click here to learn more about our SEO services, or learn more about those red velvet cupcakes that we love so much. That is a good opportunity not only to infuse keywords, but also to make the link more understandable. And then finally, content optimization. So there's a lot of room to do SEO outside of your web pages. Certainly a blog is the perfect place to do it. I talked about the long tail keywords that you can use to really hone in on those longer searches, the more specific ones. Those are perfect for blog posts and ones I use all the time for blogging I do for clients. I also like to do questions within those blog posts as well. So make sure if you're a blogger or a writer or want to be, make sure you're asking your client on a regular basis, what are those FAQs you're getting all the time that people just keep asking you? Not only will they be able to optimize for it on the website by having a post there, because most certainly if people are asking on a regular basis, they're searching for it as well. And number two, I love to use this. When I get a question from a client and I think that's a perfect blog post, and then I get it in the future, that next time I'm able to say, you know what, I have the perfect blog post for you. And I don't have to spend the time on the phone or an email by rehashing everything I've already talked about. I can say, here's the link. It answers your question. And your clients can do that too. Next, email newsletters. Now, I know that emails are not going to be indexed by the search engines. They're coming right to your email unless you're archiving those email newsletters somewhere on your site. But you can incorporate keywords throughout your subject and your copy, mostly because I think it's a good practice, right? If you're optimizing a website or your blog or social media, anything, for certain keywords that your clients, customers are searching for, it's just in good practice to use those same ones within your emails as well. Videos are certainly important. YouTube is actually the second biggest search engine next to Google. And so people are searching there all the time. Video titles, descriptions, tags, hashtags, those are all important places to optimize videos. And just want to make a note on that as well, that with videos and images, Google cannot see them. The search engines cannot see images and videos. And so that's why we need to use things like alt tags to describe images for people with screen readers and also for Google to understand them. In that vein, you have the opportunity to rank for Google image search. I'm sure you've seen the images come up within those Google searches. And then with video, same thing. You want to make sure that it has a really keyword rich title and really describes what the video is about, because you can show up in video search or on Vimeo or YouTube itself. Next, social media. And while social media isn't, again, like email, going to rank necessarily, other than for people searching for like brand names, the hashtags and sometimes the content to a certain extent, and titles even for things like reels or other videos, they do have the opportunity to rank. So people doing searches on Facebook, Instagram, certainly Pinterest as well, it's still really important to optimize those posts. Podcasts, same thing. You want to incorporate those keywords within the title, the description, links, make sure it's well optimized. I'm sure many of you know this already, but in my mind, podcasts are also the perfect blog post because you can embed the podcast audio in whatever you use and then do either a transcript, or you can do some main highlights from that and create a beautiful blog post. So driving people from the search engines there. And then last but not least, content offers. So this is going to be any sort of freebie or giveaway. You want to make sure that that's optimized as well as with any sort of download page or sales page for that content offer. All right, phew, we're getting there. 2 down, 1 to go, and I'm looking pretty good on time. I'm trying to save some time for FAQs or some questions at the end. So with on-page optimization, we learned about keyword research, keyword optimization, and content optimization. So these are all things that you can put into place today for your clients. All right, last but not least is hiring an SEO subcontractor. So if you say, Nikki, this is all well and good. I mean, I can geek out about some SEO, but I don't want to do it. Totally cool. This is probably for you if you're a web design development shop or you're a digital marketing agency. And again, you just don't have that person in-house, you don't want to do it, and maybe you're just not ready to have a full-time hire. Hiring a freelancer or a subcontractor is the perfect thing to do here, because you can offer the service, improve your value, give more value to your clients, and have the peace of mind knowing that somebody knows what they're doing and can act professionally on your behalf. So how do we go about this? Couple of steps, and I will say these are probably similar to any sort of hiring of a subcontractor that you may have done in the past, or maybe you're new to it. So it may be repeats, but I do want to focus your attention on just a few key things, especially when it comes to an SEO person. So number one, where do your clients need more help? So if you are a web developer and you're launching websites regularly, you've got a lot of work, where do your clients need more help? Are you constantly getting questions about whether they're indexed or why they're not ranking? If that starts happening a lot, this may be a good situation for you to be in by bringing on a freelancer or subcontractor. Number two, what SEO services are you always getting asked about? Maybe you just are getting inundated with questions and people always asking about SEO, and you just have to keep saying, we don't do that, we don't do that. Maybe now you can. And what SEO services do you want to outsource? So maybe you're in a situation where you do a little bit of SEO, but people are asking for more, you want to give more value. Where can you offload some of those things? So I really want you to start by getting clear on all of this before you start going out and doing your search. Because if you've ever hired someone, you know the more organized you are, which we're going to talk about next, the better the hiring process and the whole process altogether. So speaking of getting organized, I want you to do three things. Start by creating a structure. So I want you to think about how you're going to hire the person, how it's going to flow. And it's going to be a lot based on personal preference, I would say. So first things first, what is the client subcontractor interaction going to look like? For some of the subcontracting I do, I work directly, I'm client facing. I have meetings, I take calls, I'm always available to those clients, and I've got my hat on for that subcontractor. So I'm not acting as a part of their company. Hopefully you can hear me. It looks like I'm live again. Sorry about that. Headphones die so fast sometimes.
Yeah, just lost audio for a second, but you're back now.
We're good. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so how do you want to handle that client subcontractor interaction? Maybe it's a sort of situation where you're not sure, it could go either way. You find someone, they're really great, you know, interpersonally, and they can really handle themselves. Awesome, put them in front of the client. Or maybe you find someone, they're really great at what they do, but they're not really great client facing. That's totally something you can decide later. Second, project management. How are you going to manage projects that they're a part of? Again, are they more client facing or are they behind the scenes? What availability and what's the word I want to use? How transparent are they to the client, essentially? Like I said, I'm in situations both ways. So that's a personal preference up to you. It may be something where at first you sort of keep them less transparent. The client knows that you're doing SEO, but doesn't know the person necessarily. And as you build that trust with that subcontractor, you can start, giving them more visibility to the client over time. And third, payroll. Of course, this is just something that comes with the territory, right? You have to figure out how you're going to pay the person. Knowing that upfront is really helpful. And if you're using a tool like we'll talk about in just a second, a third-party hiring tool, they're going to have that capability built in already. But if you're not, it's really important to figure out, are they invoicing you? Is it a regular ongoing monthly payment that you agree upon? What's it going to look like? And then develop your standard operating procedures, your SOPs. Again, this can come with the flow of things as far as once you determine who you're going to hire, what do they bring to the table? Can they do all of these things? An SEO audit, keyword research, keyword optimization, SEO copy editing, copywriting, link building, ongoing blogging, ongoing SEO reporting. Do you want to have those as service offerings and then find the perfect person? Or do you prefer to find the perfect person and go based on what their capabilities are? Totally up to you. Either way, it's really important to have those SOPs in place so that it's clear what is going to happen, what is the deliverable for the client each and every time, so that's crystal clear. And then lastly, of course, you need to know your budget. The sky is obviously not the limit when it comes to subcontracting, because you make a certain amount of money and you certainly can't pay your subcontractor more than that amount. So figure out what works for you as far as price point and go based on that. You can do either per project, per hour, totally up to you. So just keep that in mind beforehand. And then as you do your search, you'll be able to hone in on somebody a little bit better, keeping price in mind. So how do we find subcontractors?
It may be a little bit overwhelming depending on where you are in this process. If you have a good network and you know some people, it may seem a little bit easier. But if you're new to it and you think, wow, I'm really liking everything Nicki's talking about, I think this could really grow my business, I never thought of this before, awesome. But where do I start? Here's a couple of places. So one of my favorites is Upwork, or you can use Fiverr or any other sort of freelancing website. There's a ton of them out there now. And basically you can go to these places, put up a job posting, essentially, put up your budget, your needs, all of that good stuff, and then people will come to you. You can also actively go out and search for those people. And these are nice, depending on your preference. They're nice because you can do all sorts of things like time tracking. They handle all of the like the 1099, any sort of tax stuff for you, and they also handle all of the billing. So basically you pay them, they pay the subcontractor. Because I know as a part of this process, it can be kind of overwhelming to think that you're paying a stranger or you can get what you paid for. Using these services to start is a nice way to have that confidence going in that you are going to get what you pay for. Then, of course, you've got your social media networks, of course, right? LinkedIn is a great one, Facebook or Facebook groups even, if you find someone within a group. I see more and more that those are reliable places for hiring, or any other social media, of course. You can go through a recruiting company, obviously, and there are costs associated with that, certainly, or your own network. I think in general for hiring, we sort of discount our own network because we think we know everybody we know, right? But that's not always the case. So reach out to your network and see who they know, who they trust, because obviously there's inherent trust there as well, which is really nice. So last thing, which is probably the most important if you're wanting to hire an SEO subcontractor, some of these things apply for any sort of hire, but some of them are going to be a little bit unique. So the client or the subcontractor, of course, has a solid portfolio with example sites that they've worked on, and you can actually go to them. And now that you know a little bit about technical and on-page SEO, you can actually do your due diligence as far as checking to make sure that they've done something on the website. So for example, if you do that site command on Google and you see there's nothing indexed or that the title tags are terrible, you may discount them as a potential hire. They have excellent organic search traffic stats. So they're able to show you how they've helped their clients, as well as awesome search engine ranking stats. They may not be able to share the client depending on the contract with that person, but they can at least show you screenshots or have some stats ready. References or reviews, obviously, those are fantastic. The ability to answer some basic SEO questions. You can do some Google searches around this, but you could say, what is your stance on schema? How do you implement that? Or what would your title tag be for this website if you had to pick one? You can do some basic questions to kind of make sure that they are who they say they are. Certainly that they're a good fit based on company mission, structure, and the culture of your website. Sorry, there's a bug flying. You want to make sure they're a good fit, obviously, and a good fit for time and your financial budget. And then certainly based on any personality traits that you in particular look for. Do you want somebody that's really professional, super good at interpersonal skills because you want them client facing? Are they good with timeliness and so on? Those are all things that you'd expect from any typical hire. And so that is everything for hiring an SEO subcontractor. So we talked about getting clear on what you need, getting organized for the subcontractor, looking in the right places, and finally what to look for in an SEO subcontractor. So this is everything that you learned today. We will have a couple of minutes left, which is awesome. So we talked about implementing technical SEO, implementing on-page SEO, and hiring a subcontractor. So with all that said, I hope that you walk away from today knowing that even though you're not an SEO person, maybe that you can start using these services to grow your own business and to help your clients do even better online. So I just want to say thank you so much. I so appreciate the time and everybody being here. I appreciate you so much, and thank you for being here with me. You can follow me at any of the major social media networks. I'm at Simple Sprout Studio or simplesprout.studio online. And I did not forget about the freebie I promised you. So if you want to DIY SEO for your clients, you can grab the exact checklist that I use for my clients at this URL. that I've got here, nickiong.com/simplesprout/checklist. And it's a 3-page checklist of every single thing that I do for clients. And I hope you enjoy that. And then, oh, once you grab this, I'll just give you a second to screenshot this, because you'll actually be able to click this link from the presentation. I'll just go to this page. So this is the link. If you want to download the slides from today, you can go here and you can get that freebie link as well. So Nicki Ong /WP, sorry, I couldn't get rid of that, and /slides, you'll get the entire presentation and be able to click on all these links. So that is it.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely took a bunch of screenshots during that thing.
Awesome.
And we'll probably download the slides now, because that's much simpler than taking lots of screenshots and then keeping track of them. It looks like we have just a couple of minutes. I don't see any Q&As in the or any questions in the Q&A tab, so I am going to probably just steal you for a moment to ask my own questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys do have questions, I will say just you can fill out my contact form on my site, or reach out to me on social media if you come up with something after.
A couple really quick. One, do you have any tips for optimizing SEO for e-commerce stores? I have a little bit of an e-commerce bias for what I do, but do you have any tips for e-commerce stores specifically?
Yes. So e-commerce typically has a lot of duplicate content issues. So basically what I mean by that is, let's say you have a jewelry e-commerce store and you've got a bunch of necklaces listed, and you've got like 10 of the same necklace, but the only difference is the color, let's say, like the color of the stone or something. So what will end up happening on the search engine standpoint is that if the pages are too similar, if there's too much duplicate content, they'll often only show one of those pages. So let's say the pink necklace is the only one they show and you have 10 products, which is a huge problem. You're missing out on 9 potential opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So the best thing you can do for e-commerce, I will say, is make each page as unique as you possibly can. I know it's really challenging, but maybe you say, like for the pink one, it's perfect for Valentine's Day, and you do a whole little story about how it's so wonderful for Valentine's Day, and the red one's perfect for Christmas and you know, another holiday or something like that, for example. However you can make them as unique as possible, you're going to do okay.
Awesome. And then just real quick, what are like maybe top 3 tools that you use every single day? Doesn't
Definitely
have to be SEO necessarily, but it can be.
Absolutely. Well, I do a lot of blogging and a lot of copywriting. So I would say thesaurus.com I use every single day. Nice. Because there are only so many words in my brain, and sometimes I just need a different one. I love Google Search Console. I'm obsessed with it. I use it almost every day because there's just so much good information there. And then third, I love Google Drive. I actually don't have much on my computer anymore. I use Google Drive because I do a lot of collaboration. It's perfect for like sharing with clients. I can see exactly any edits that they have for, you know, website feedback or copy feedback. So yeah, those 3 definitely.
Awesome. Those are good choices. Yeah, thank you so much. Before everyone heads out and we'll give you the rest of your day back, I just wanted to just let you know about a couple of upcoming GoDaddy events to make sure to register for. On Monday, we have simplified GoDaddy payments on WooCommerce by a colleague of mine is giving a talk there, Ryan, and that's Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And then join us back here at the same time next Wednesday for Everyone Wins with 5 for the Future. We'll be talking about contributing back to as well. So make sure you go to GoDaddy Pro's events page, which is events.godaddy.com, to register and sign up for those and meet us back here. Thank you so much again, Nicki, for joining us. That was great. And I'm going to go download the slides right now.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Right.
Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us.